In the years of fierce anti-American resistance in our land, a fervent movement emerged to search for a precious and equally mysterious wood, Agarwood. The reason this rare wood was highly sought after was its unique, rich fragrance. What made it even more special was that the scent of Agarwood was unlike any floral perfume. It was more like an oil, subtly sweet, and its aroma intensified with a higher resin content. When the oil content was significant enough, the wood could even sink in water. Depending on the oil impregnation, color, fragrance, shape, weight, and origin, Agarwood had different names, such as Kai Nam, but they all originated from the Aquilaria tree. The difference merely lay in the intensity of the scent. Though Agarwood was precious, it was fiercely desired, not just for its aroma, but primarily for its spiritual and feng shui value. Since ancient times, many believed that Agarwood formed from the accumulated essence of heaven and earth, bringing good fortune, luck, and the ability to dispel evil spirits and negative energy. Owning Agarwood was thought to instill confidence and peace in life and work. For this reason, both magnates and the poor sought it. The wealthy used Agarwood for feng shui and decoration, while the poor sold it to the rich, hoping to change their lives. It seemed like a guaranteed path to wealth, but it wasn't. This was not something easily found. People had to sacrifice their youth, venturing into the dense forests, crossing treacherous streams, even risking their lives, becoming prey to the forest demons, or falling victim to gangs of bandits and smugglers lurking in these remote, dangerous mountains. The story below recounts the journey of a group of Agarwood hunters as they delved deeper into the venomous forest, where dark and sinister mysteries awaited, threatening to claim their very lives. It was the autumn of 1980 in Van Ninh District, Con Hoa Province. 5 men ventured forth from the edge of the forest. Each carried a canvas backpack filled with food and water, and a freshly sharpened machete hung at their hip. Among them was the youngest, Hai, 30 years old. The remaining 4, Mr. Mew, Mr. Hung, Mr. Tan, and Mr. Bin, were all over 50, with grizzled hair and dark, leathery skin, yet their physiques were surprisingly robust, a stark contrast to their ages. These Agarwood hunters were from the same village, all married with children, driven by the harsh realities of life. Today, they embarked on this journey hoping to find that invaluable wood. Hai, however, was different. An orphan who had drifted since childhood, seeking a living, he had a quiet and reserved nature. This temperament stemmed from his time as a textile factory worker in Saigon at 20, where the closed environment meant little interaction, shaping his personality to this day. More than 2 months prior, these 4 Agarwood hunters had heard rumors from friends about a very special kind of Agarwood in this forest. They spoke of it not as ordinary Agarwood, but as a spirit Agarwood. It sounded outlandish, yet their primary goal remained simply finding Agarwood. They weren't overly concerned with supernatural tales. Just finding Agarwood would be cause for celebration. Being locals from Con Hoa, they were intimately familiar with this forest's paths and waterways, often navigating it without even a map. Today, guided by an acquaintance of Mr. Truong, they entered the forest but veered onto a new, vast section. This forest was truly immense, stretching across a boundless expanse of ancient, towering trees and dense, thorny thickets. The trails were treacherous, making it difficult for anyone without prior experience. The terrain itself was already notorious for many eerie, spiritual occurrences that even now struck fear into people's hearts. The moment Hai and the men first stepped into this part of the forest, he felt an immediate, chilling sensation. He thought it was merely his inherently timid nature combined with his weakness, causing a touch of fear. But Hai didn't know that his intuition was entirely correct, for this fateful journey would completely change his life. The forest paths were incredibly winding, crisscrossed by tangled vines that snagged their arms. Hai's arms were even scratched and bled by sharp leaves. At this point, Mr. Truong pulled out a map and called everyone to gather, explaining, "The map points to a forest not far from this familiar path, but that section of the forest is much denser with vegetation. Also, according to those who went before us, Agarwood is found only in high, deep, and treacherous forest regions. That's also where the most Aquilaria trees grow. Let's head up this steep path. The harder the path, the better our chances of finding Agarwood." The group listened to Mr. Truong and followed the most difficult route. In this venomous and deadly forest, dangers lurked everywhere, from leopards to forest leeches, and most dreaded by all Agarwood hunters, spiritual entities, the forest ghosts and demons. Beyond this mountainous region lay the border with Cambodia, and that border held another menace: the bandits and smugglers who made their lair there, facilitating their illicit activities. These shadowy criminals were a second major concern for the Agarwood hunters. Speaking of Agarwood hunting, a stranger might think it's as simple as entering the forest and searching. But in reality, it was far more complex, involving countless spiritual taboos. According to experienced elders, before embarking on an Agarwood hunt, one had to consult an auspicious day and hour, bathe thoroughly, eat a vegetarian diet, and most importantly, remain pure for 3 days, meaning no conjugal relations with one's spouse. This was because Agarwood was considered sacred. Besides its medicinal and perfumery uses, it was employed to ward off evil, serving as a bridge between mortals and deities. Therefore, it was highly sensitive to impurity. Anyone who went into the forest today, after having relations with someone of the opposite sex the day before, was deemed to have violated a major taboo, and misfortune or even death could befall them. After a period of silent trekking, Mr. Tan broke the quiet by recounting an old story. "You know, fellas, I once heard about some villagers living near here. They were dirt poor, farmers just like us. But one day they found a huge amount of Agarwood in this very forest, and just like that their lives changed. They became rich, built 5-story houses, huge ones. That's why we're here. This forest is still pristine, so the chances of finding Agarwood are high. In a few years, this forest will be completely cut down, not a single piece left," Mr. Tan stated emphatically. Though the 4 experienced men knew this forest well, they remained highly vigilant, for danger could ambush them at any moment. Mr. Bin then cautioned, "In general, we must be careful. The elders say, eat from the forest, gain its blessings, but lose your virtue. Nothing in this world is given for free." At Mr. Bin's words, everyone fell silent. Beneath the quiet lay an indescribable anxiety. Indeed, it was a dream everyone cherished, yet people often said, life is not a dream. Some people changed their lives through sheer luck or blessings from past lives, or by praying to the forest spirits for Agarwood. But nothing was truly free. This was terribly true, for what lay ahead in this forest was nothing but bloody death. After walking for a while, Hai felt a bit tired. He took a gulp of water and asked, "This forest path is really treacherous. Do you think there's any Agarwood here, sirs?" Mr. Mew scoffed. "Oh, this kid. If finding Agarwood were as easy as picking vegetables, everyone would be rich. Besides, finding Agarwood is a matter of fate and requires great perseverance and patience. If you have those, you're suited for this trade. But if you keep complaining about being tired, you'll surely meet your demise in this line of work," Mr. Bin interjected. "He's still young, let him experience it. Everyone starts somewhere. Don't be too harsh on him, Mr. Mew." Mr. Mew, an Agarwood hunter known for his industriousness and tireless spirit, was slightly displeased by Hai's complaint. Indeed, as he said, this trade had no room for idleness. As for Hai, he couldn't be blamed. Having worked only in Saigon, doing whatever he was told, this was his first time helping the group, hoping to earn some money. If these men found Agarwood, it was understood that people only befriended neighbors, not strangers like him. Hearing their disparaging remarks, Hai simply lowered his head and kept walking. After a long trek, everyone spread out to rest on nearby rocks. The elders checked their bags again. They took out a pack of grilled pork and dried food along with water to stave off hunger. Hai also took out some instant food and ate in silence. Mr. Mew glanced over and asked, "What's your name again, son? I forgot." "My name is Hai," he replied. Mr. Mew then asked, "How old are you this year?" 30, Hai said. "Ah, still young. Why don't you find a safer job instead of this dangerous one? I know I was a bit harsh earlier, but we're just worried you might get into trouble. We're old now, we don't mean anything by it," Mr. Bin added cheerfully. "Hai is young and wants to test himself. Let him gain experience. Everyone starts as a blank slate. Don't take it to heart, Hai. You're from Saigon, so you might not be used to our blunt northern ways, but these uncles here, though gruff, care deeply for each other." Hai smiled. "No, I'm not upset. I'm just curious what Agarwood trees look like." Agarwood is a very precious wood. It emits a wonderful essential oil fragrance. Because it's so precious, it's rare. This forest used to have a lot of it, but people have exploited it almost to exhaustion, Mr. Mew explained. Hai then asked, "I heard there are many dangerous animals in this forest. Is that true?" "Wild animals are everywhere. That's why we always carry machetes for defense. But truly, the dangers in these mountains and forests are endless. Mr. Bin clarified, adding, "Actually, it's not just leopards and tigers that are the only threats. The elders say there are many ghosts and demons in this forest. Even Agarwood can turn into a demon." "What? Agarwood can turn into a demon? But it's just wood," Hai exclaimed. "You don't know, son. In ancient times, our country had many shamans who would perform rituals to heaven and earth. To make Agarwood sacred, the shaman would sacrifice a person. After the ritual, the Agarwood would gain sentience, like a human, and obey the shaman's commands. It's a long story. I'll tell you more tonight." The group continued their journey. It was around 11 a.m. when they decided to rest on a rocky outcrop. Each man took out some cooked wild boar from their backpack and ate. After a short rest, they resumed walking, occasionally chatting to ease the boredom. Hai, being new, felt a bit awkward while the four elders conversed. Suddenly, the birds in the forest scattered wildly. Knowing a dangerous animal was nearby, Mr. Bin immediately warned, "Tiger, everyone, get your knives ready. The danger is closing in with every step." The heavy footfalls of the beast slowly approached. But these were seasoned men. Facing death, they had no concept of flight, only fighting to the last breath. About an hour later, nothing had changed. The afternoon was setting in. Mr. Tan's eyes were tense as he watched a nearby bush where something seemed to be shaking the leaves relentlessly. Indeed, a few minutes later, a large, yellow-furred silhouette with black stripes appeared. It was an old tiger, its fangs bared, stalking them. "Good heavens, a tiger!" Mr. Mew cried out. Before them stood a wild tiger, gnashing its enormous fangs, ready to hunt. It was colossal, nearly the size of a water buffalo in Vietnam. Such large tigers were rare, almost countable on one hand, indicating it was an old, experienced beast. It slowly advanced towards the Agarwood hunters. Hai's face was bloodless, his soul nearly fled his body. He was about to bolt when Mr. Mew grabbed his arm. "Calm down, kid. We've dealt with this kind of animal many times before. It's nothing." With a fearless and almost reckless nature, Mr. Bin stepped forward and calmly said, "Let's work together to kill it." Seeing the four muscular men brandishing their sharp knives, the tiger snarled aggressively, ready for battle. Hai was still terrified, as this was his first encounter with a wild beast. People said that such large creatures must have lived for a long time and devoured many humans. Mr. Bin, completely unafraid, held his sharp machete. Its gleaming blade was so keen it could cleanly sever a tree branch with little effort. Seeing the knife in the man's hand, the tiger's eyes flared with anger, realizing this prey wouldn't be easy. Suddenly, with a powerful leap, the tiger pounced on Mr. Bin. With swift agility, he sidestepped, not forgetting to deliver a swift cut to its flank. Wounded, the tiger roared in agony, blood gushing from the wound and dripping onto the ground. Enraged, it lunged again, striking with its powerful claws, but this time Mr. Bin quickly ducked, then decisively plunged his knife into its throat with a fatal blow. The other three men swiftly joined in, repeatedly stabbing and hacking at the beast's body. Sounds of flesh being torn and bones cracking filled the air. Exhausted, the tiger finally drew its last breath. The entire group collapsed, utterly drained from the battle with the predator. Afterward, they worked together to skin and butcher the tiger for food storage. Its fangs and claws were kept as mementos for their families. Truly, in this venomous and deadly forest, facing the dangers brought by wild beasts, the only way for humans to survive was to fight with savage determination. Seeing Hai's pale face, Mr. Bin chuckled, "This is nothing, kid. Our group once hunted a gaur." Mr. Tan confirmed, "That's right, Hai. It took us an entire day to kill that gaur. This tiger was actually easier to kill. Gaurs are much tougher. If you're unlucky, before you even attack, you'll be gored by its deadly horns." Looking at the dead tiger's carcass, Hai finally understood the fierce and brutal survival instincts of these men. They were like the wild tigers themselves, possessing immense strength to survive in this deadly forest. Now his heart held no fear, only an eager desire to find Agarwood. Before, he had only heard stories of Agarwood hunters. Now, this real-life trial filled him with a passion and thrill, typical for a young man like Hai. But people always say, if you walk at night too often, you'll eventually meet a ghost. At that very moment, from a distant, mysterious place deep within the forest, behind dense bushes, a malevolent entity opened its glowing red eyes, waiting for them, heralding a bloody hunt. Come here, my delicious prey." The journey continued until dusk. A thick fog gradually enveloped the landscape. In the distance, the cries of birds and the howls of unknown creatures intensified the mournful and anxious atmosphere. Hai had some experience in the forest but had never ventured this deep. Fortunately, being with this group of Agarwood hunters eased his anxiety somewhat. After a while, Mr. Treewong, the leader, announced, "It's getting dark, everyone. Let's set up our hammocks here and rest for the night. Tomorrow, we'll continue our journey." Everyone readily helped Mr. Treewong. The 5 men divided tasks. Some helped hang hammocks, others gathered firewood and cooked the tiger meat. Everyone assisted each other, and preparations were quickly completed. That night, the 5 men sat by the flickering campfire. Perhaps it was Hai's first time sharing stories with people from the mountains. For the first time, he felt a sense of belonging with them, like family, no longer a stranger. Mr. Tan and Mr. Mew sang some old songs, while Mr. Hung and Mr. Bin sat roasting slices of the freshly hunted tiger meat. Unaccustomed to wild tiger meat, Hai hesitated to eat. The others simply ate their fill, then exchanged stories of their lives, their trades, and their wartime experiences to boost their spirits for the journey ahead. Still curious about the legend of the Agarwood Demon, Hai asked, "Sirs, can you tell me more about that Agarwood Demon story from earlier? I'm quite fond of eerie tales." "Ask anything you want, kid," Mr. Bin replied. "Could you tell me the full origin of that story?" "Sure, I'll tell you." The 3 middle-aged men and Hai slowly listened as Mr. Bin recounted the tale. Very few people knew this legend, and even those who did weren't particularly interested. The story took place long, long ago in this very forest, where an ancient ethnic village existed. Many tribes lived there, having settled for generations, so they were all very united and helped each other. However, the village was desperately poor, their fields yielded little, and their lives grew harder year by year, leading to increasing desperation. To escape this hunger, the village chief demanded that every year a virgin girl be sacrificed to the forest god, but the outcome never changed. Then, one hungry night, an old shaman whose origin was unknown approached the village chief. He offered to help the village escape its poverty, but only if a young girl was sacrificed in a ritual. Mr. Bin shook his head with a sigh. "You know, that old shaman's actions were even more evil than a wild beast's." Hai asked, "What do you mean, Mr. Bin?" "Because that morning, the village chief would choose a beautiful maiden from the village. Then the entire group would tie her near an Agarwood tree. Back then, these Agarwood trees were as large as ancient banyans, not small at all. I suppose you've all heard about human sacrifice, right?" Mr. Mew replied with a somber tone. "Yes, those ethnic people always performed such rituals. Luckily, our village isn't so superstitious, or else our daughters wouldn't have survived." Indeed, humans can be so cruel, killing their own kind just for common gain, sacrificing even love and compassion. Hai and the others listened intently to the rest of the story. They wanted to turn the Agarwood into a spirit to amplify the village's good fortune. So, they hired a shaman to perform a sacrifice, then killed a virgin, offering her blood to the Agarwood. After consuming the blood, the Agarwood would become a demon and gain sentience. Over time, it absorbed much negative energy and became a truly terrifying entity, even more frightening than ghosts and demons. After the Agarwood transformed into a demon, it gained human consciousness. Gradually, after years of absorbing fresh blood, it took on the form of a woman, precisely the form of the virgin sacrificed. Once the Agarwood became a spirit and took human form, it gained self-awareness and quickly killed the old shaman, refusing to be anyone's puppet. Perhaps it was because she was unjustly killed and forced to become a demon that she sought revenge. From then on, that female demon roamed the forest, hiding in its depths, specifically targeting men. Only men had strong yang energy, and by absorbing their yang energy and blood, she grew even more powerful. Hearing the end of the story, Hai was both surprised and uneasy. Mr. Bin's tale felt too real. Perhaps this forest harbored more spirits than he imagined. As Mr. Bin finished his story, Mr. Hung, who sat beside him, chimed in with another tale. "Speaking of ghosts and demons, this forest has countless. There's another incredibly terrifying demon rumored to reside deep within, which the villagers call the forest demon. This malevolent demon is known as the guardian of the sacred forest. According to legend, the forest demon is a monstrous creature with a human-like body, covered in dark, shaggy fur. Its hands and feet bear sharp claws capable of swiftly disemboweling a tiger. Its eyes glow fiery red, able to shine in the dark to lure prey, both human and animal. However, the forest demon is not as powerful as the Agarwood demoness, for the Agarwood Spirit has reached a level considered a god demon, no longer just a mere demon. That night, Hai lay in his hammock, a little uneasy. He couldn't sleep, partly because he was in an unfamiliar place and partly due to his timid nature. He constantly felt as if someone was watching him from outside. Gazing at the star-filled sky, he thought about the brightness of the night and the full moon, reflecting on his past and future. He felt helpless, having to live such a life. People always spoke of how difficult things were during wartime, with lingering customs and discrimination in every aspect, some discriminating based on region, others on class, or, like him, being an orphan. That was why for decades, Hai had felt surrounded by countless difficulties. Perhaps what he needed most now was to find a way to earn money without resorting to illegal means. After pondering for a while, Hai glanced at the hammocks of the other Agarwood hunters. They had been fast asleep for a long time. He, too, slowly drifted into a deep slumber. As he lay in a hazy sleep, he suddenly caught a faint, pleasant fragrance. It seemed to be the scent of wood and essential oils, blending together, making Hai's entire body feel relaxed. Then, a soft, ethereal whisper, like a gentle voice, drifted with the wind and reached his ears. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind swept through, making Hai shiver, but because he was still half asleep, his body wouldn't obey. The whisper grew faint, and a hand swayed, beckoning. At that moment, he felt as if from a distant bush, slow footsteps were approaching. The sound of someone stepping on dry leaves, coupled with the rustling wind, made him incredibly uneasy. The woody fragrance grew stronger, and he recognized the scent, yet because he was still deeply asleep, and that whisper kept echoing in his ears. Initially, Hai thought it was bandits, but it was strange. Why would bandits wear perfume? And if they wanted to kill his group, they could have rushed them earlier at the campfire. Then, suddenly, the shadowy figure of an unknown person stood right beside his hammock. He felt a soft touch on his hand, and a voice whispered, come with me, dear." At that moment, he clearly heard the voice of a young girl. But strangely, hearing her voice, he felt as if he had been hypnotized. Hai sat up and opened his eyes. Before him stood a girl dressed in ethnic attire, her long hair flowing in the wind. Strangely, he couldn't make out her face, only an enigmatic smile on her lips, accompanied by the strong, sweet aroma of wood and essential oils emanating from her body. The girl's voice called out, "Come with me." She grasped his hand, but it was odd. For some reason, her hand felt as cold and stiff as sun-dried wood. Without another word, as if possessed by an invisible force, the girl held Hai's hand, lifted him into the air, and soared into the deep forest. Realizing the girl wasn't human, Hai, trembling with fear, stammered, Who are you? Where are you taking me?" But his only answer was a faint smile. Her hair still veiled her face, but her hands still held his tightly as she flew them through trees, over endless abysses, making Hai's heart pound with terror. Thinking this girl was a demon, he resigned himself to fate. He thought, well, I have no parents, no one left. If I die an unjust death, so be it. The girl stopped, pulling him to a nearby spot. Under the moonlight shining over the forest, before him lay a vast, beautiful valley. "Isn't it beautiful, dear?" the girl asked. "Very beautiful, but where is this?" Hai asked, bewildered. The girl chuckled gently. She led him to sit under an ancient tree, not just an ancient tree, but one that was strangely unique. Its foliage was dense, and it emitted a strong, intoxicating fragrance, just like the scent from the girl's body. Then the girl gazed into the distance and asked Hai, "Are you from afar? Your strange clothes tell me you're not from around here." "I'm from Saigon. Life's a bit tough right now, so I'm with these uncles looking for precious wood. Humans are truly foolish, willing to gamble their lives for things that don't belong to them," she continued, turning back to him. "I know everyone in this world must make a living, and your uncles too, but I'm afraid this journey will be their last. You will all die in this forest." The girl nodded, then added, "This is a sacred, venomous place. Anyone who dares to challenge the sacred forest will only meet death. Perhaps you don't know, but this forest holds many mysteries, doesn't it?" "I know, but we're all just trying to make a living. After the war, the economy hasn't developed. That's why I, along with those uncles, ventured here, hoping to find Agarwood to change our lives," Hai said. The girl then explained, "A living is something we create with our own hands. Nothing in this world is given freely. Some people find Agarwood, but later their fortunes are ruined. Even if their ancestors protect them, their children and grandchildren's wealth will eventually vanish. There's always a natural law. No one gives anything to anyone for free. Hai seemed to ponder the truth in her words. He then asked timidly, "Oh, I forgot to ask your name earlier." "What is it so we know how to address each other?" The girl laughed heartily and replied, "My name is Mua, I live nearby. My village burned down years ago. I was little then, I didn't know anything, and in a panic I ran into the forest to hide." Hai nodded slightly, but something didn't feel right. He asked, "But I only see forest and large trees around here. Where is your home?" The girl then answered, "Ah, my house is small, so I didn't take you there out of shyness. I've lived here for a very long time, but because I avoid strangers, I rarely venture out. This is the first time I've met and spoken to someone like you." "Oh, I'm Hai, 20 years old. This is my first time in this forest, so I'm a bit lost. These uncles know a lot, so I came along to learn. After decades of wandering to make a living, I feel so inexperienced compared to everyone." Hearing him, the girl nodded with an enigmatic smile and asked, "Do you have a family?" In her question, Hai felt a little embarrassed. Perhaps having never known a woman since childhood, he was now somewhat shy. Seeing the young man's face redden, the girl took his hand and spoke in a serious tone, "I'm going to ask you something. Suppose at a moment of life and death, with life on one side and death on the other, there's a glimmer of hope or salvation, but it requires a sacrifice. Would you accept it?" "Well, why are you asking me that?" Hai said. The girl then looked annoyed. "Oh, you. I'm just giving an example. I'm not threatening you, so why are you scared?" Hai felt there was a hidden meaning in her riddle. Though he was reserved, he wasn't without thoughts. Many times he thought if he expressed his thoughts, they would get angry. But after long deliberation, the young man slowly replied to the girl, "Actually, I'm an orphan like you. Someone like me has nothing to lose. So, for example, if death came to me, I wouldn't accept my fate. But if caught between life and death, if there's a glimmer of hope for salvation, I would be willing to sacrifice myself to escape the jaws of death, to live a good life without harming anyone." At that very moment, whether by coincidence or not, as Hai finished speaking, a strong, illusory gust of wind swept through, and the spiritual energy of the two suddenly flared. In the sky, lightning flashed with deafening roars, splitting the darkness. Bright streaks of lightning crisscrossed the sky for a moment, then vanished. A sense of disorientation washed over him. He felt as if the entire forest and the space around him were whispering to each other. The girl beside him remained calm, as if nothing had happened. Looking at her face, he saw her still gazing into the distance, wearing a ghostly smile that was hard to describe. It was then that Hai realized one thing about this girl: she was a phantom. Even now, he still couldn't clearly see her face. And the next strange thing was the scent of wood that kept emanating from her. Hai turned and asked, "Miss, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of perfume are you wearing? It smells so good. Also, this tree has a similar fragrance to you." The girl smiled and turned to him. "What's the matter? Why are you so shy? You're a man, why are you so timid like a girl?" Hai chuckled awkwardly and said, "I just don't know what kind of perfume you're wearing that smells so good. And this tree smells like you too." "Oh, that! This is the essential oil fragrance that emanates from my body. Every girl wants to smell good, it's normal," the girl said. Hai agreed, letting it go, even though her words seemed nonsensical. After chatting for a while, she asked, "Are you and those uncles in this forest looking for Agarwood?" "Yes," Hai replied. "If that's true, then you should all leave this forest as soon as possible. And if you venture deeper, beware. This forest holds many dangers. There are things here far more malevolent than wild beasts. I've lived here for many years, I know. Perhaps you think they're just snakes or wild tigers, but no. There are things far more mysterious and evil." Hai questioned, "You say you've lived here for many years, but you look so young." At this point, she continued, but her voice had completely changed, as if echoing from a distant, forlorn place. "Hai, let me show you my face, okay?" And with that, she turned to him and slowly brushed her hair aside. The sight before him nearly made a timid soul like Hai's heart burst. It was a pallid face with two glowing green eyes like a lost spirit. She gave a chilling smile and playfully asked, "Don't you think I'm beautiful?" Hai was frozen in fear, utterly horrified. He screamed and fainted. The space around them suddenly plunged into profound darkness, devoid of any sound. The crowing of jungle fowl announced the dawn. The forest light pulled the young man out of the nightmare of darkness. He awoke in his hammock, feeling tired and sore from tossing and turning all night. Remembering the strange dream, he stretched to relieve the stiffness in his bones. At that moment, a loud laugh erupted beside him. Mr. Bin's voice boomed, "Did you see a ghost last night, kid? Why are you so shaken?" Hai jumped. then saw Mr. Bin laughing heartily. He replied, "I had a nightmare, a bit unsettling, but it's fine." "Oh, by the way, where were you last night when I looked for you?" Hai recounted his dream, to which Mr. Bin replied in surprise, "You were in your hammock the whole time. And look, I found this at your feet. Is it yours?" In Mr. Bin's hand was a piece of Agarwood carved into the shape of a young girl. Mr. Bin knew that Hai had encountered the Agarwood Spirit, but he saw that Hai was still healthy, with no signs of possession, so he kept it to himself and his friends. Being a local, Mr. Bin believed in spiritual legends. Moreover, there was another reason Mr. Bin hid it from the others. If they knew Hai possessed such sacred Agarwood, their greed would ignite, and the journey would no longer be peaceful. He then urged Hai to eat breakfast with everyone. Looking at the others still slicing and grilling tiger meat, Hai greeted them and sat down to eat with everyone. "You'll get used to this environment, and with many people you won't get lost," Mr. Bin reassured and encouraged Hai. Mr. Mew gave Hai a piece of grilled tiger meat, telling him to eat. It was Hai's first time eating such wild game, and though it had a slightly gamey smell, it was quite edible when cooked through. Mr. Bin then continued to caution everyone. "Last night, we took a familiar forest path. The path ahead is a completely different forest, and it might harbor even more dangerous wild animals and bandits, so everyone must be extremely careful." After his words, the men slowly bit into the Agarwood, chewing it. Hai was surprised and asked Mr. Mew, "Uncle, so chewing Agarwood is real?" Mr. Mew and the others burst into laughter at Hai's question. Mr. Bin then explained, "You don't know, so I'll tell you. Chewing Agarwood is a term for survival in the forest. It has nothing to do with spirituality or anything. Agarwood hunters chew Agarwood because it contains natural nutrients, unlike many foul-smelling tree roots that no one would chew." Mr. Triwong, the leader, chuckled. Just a few words of explanation, and he understood. The journey continued in joy and laughter until nightfall. That night, Hai and the others continued to laugh and chat. Strangely, Hai slept soundly tonight. He no longer dreamt of the mysterious girl. Occasionally, he would take out the Agarwood carving from his pocket to smell it. For the first time, Hai experienced the intoxicating and strangely pleasant fragrance of Agarwood. Then he suddenly remembered the legend of the Agarwood Spirit that Mr. Bin had told the night before. A sense of unease crept in there with something he didn't know. Hai began to feel that perhaps the legendary creatures were real, not just stories. They still lurked deep in the forest, waiting to prey on unfortunate souls. He took his machete and placed it close to where he slept, ready to defend himself if any unclean entity approached. The next morning, everyone woke early to pack their belongings and continue the journey. As they walked up a slope, Mr. Mew suddenly heard a strange thumping sound, like something shuffling through the leaves. Instantly, he turned to Mr. Triwong and said, "It sounds like something's coming this way." The sound seemed to be coming from a bush. Immediately, the group looked in the direction Mr. Mew pointed, and the noise suddenly stopped. Mr. Triwong calmly said, "It's probably just some wild dogs, nothing else." Night fell, illuminating the entire gloomy mountain forest. Only the white light of the Agarwood hunters' flashlights pierced the darkness. The calls of cicadas echoed everywhere, and the caws of crows seemed to herald a bloody night. Passing through bushes, Hai and the others descended a slope, entering a deeper part of the forest, then walked a different path. They passed through a thicket of dense trees, then reached a sparse section. The path was now easier, and Hai felt a sense of relief. They had no idea that a malevolent demon had been stalking them in the shadows for a long time. 10 meters behind the group, a dark shadow stood by a tree trunk, its glowing red eyes watching intently, revealing a terrifying bloodlust. It licked its sharp fangs, thinking, "Looks like there's a lot of fresh meat in this forest tonight. Soon I'll have a feast." After a while, Mr. Mew, who was at the very back, felt a sense of unease as if someone was watching him. He turned to the group and said, "Guys, I feel like someone's following us." Indeed, there were faint footsteps. Everyone instantly spun around. In the silent darkness, the shadow drew closer with each step. Hai's face turned pale, but Mr. Bin, who was more experienced, calmly said, "Calm down, everyone. Stick close together, don't spread out." Behind them was only darkness and tangled trees, but through the gusts of wind, a shadowy figure, whose identity was unclear, slowly advanced towards them. "You dare come here to become my prey." A wild, echoing laugh sent shivers down everyone's spines, their hearts nearly bursting from terror. Hai's hands and feet trembled uncontrollably. his machete almost slipping from his grasp. This was perhaps the first time in their lives they had witnessed such a supernatural entity lurking in the dark. The forest demon they had only heard about in stories now appeared vividly before them. Mr. Bin instantly screamed, "It's the demon! Run, everyone!" Without another thought, the 5 men grabbed their machetes and fled. Mr. Bin frantically urged, "We need to run scattered, but don't lose your way. If we lose direction, we're dead." The horned black shadow bent down and ran on all fours, chasing them. "Running like this is fun, isn't it? You have to run fast for the hunt to be exciting." As the group ran in a tight cluster, Mr. Tan suddenly tripped and fell, losing his footing and making noise. Mr. Bin and Mr. Mew immediately shouted, "Tan, Tan, what's wrong?" Suddenly, a dark, foul-smelling hand with long, sharp claws gripped Mr. Tan's foot and dragged him backward into the silent darkness. Then, a horrifying scream of pain and the sound of flesh being torn echoed, then a sickening crunch. The dying cries of the unfortunate victim being torn apart and eaten reverberated through the darkness before fading. The remaining 4 continued to run in a cluster, not stopping. Their hearts pounded, sweat streamed down their bodies. At this point, Mr. Bin, in a voice filled with horror, cried out, "Gods, it ate Mr. Tan, we have to run faster." Everyone knew their lives were hanging by a thread. They continued to run, their feet crunching on branches, darting through bushes like desperate wild animals seeking a glimmer of hope for survival. After running for an unknown distance, the group once again heard the demon's laughter echoing. Mr. Bin quickly ordered, "Hide, everyone, find cover quickly. Lie face down, don't breathe heavily. That's the only way to camouflage ourselves from it." Hearing Mr. Bin, they followed suit. After a moment, Mr. Bin cautiously glanced around. Seeing no sign of the demon, he whispered, "Everyone, you can get up now." Standing up, everyone gasped for breath, their souls slowly returning to their bodies, regaining some composure. Mr. Bin then asked, "Now let's see if anyone is missing." Hai looked around and gasped, "Uncle, it looks like Mr. Hung is missing." "What? But he was running right beside me," Mr. Mew exclaimed, confirming. Mr. Bin shook his head, sighing in helpless confusion. "It seems that demon is terrifying. It snatched him so quickly that he couldn't even make a sound." "Now, let's pick up our pace and keep running. We need to find a way out." Without further thought, they got up and continued to flee, hoping to find a path leading to a village where they could seek help. The 3 remaining men kept running. When they checked their watches, they no longer heard the demon's laughter. Composing themselves, they realized that by running too fast without paying attention to their surroundings, they were completely lost. All around them was dense jungle and the calls of birds, the empty sky looming above. Each of them clutched their machetes. Hai stammered, "Uncle, we're lost. What do we do?" With years of forest experience, Mr. Bin thought of a way to calm them. "First and foremost, we must remain calm. Next, try to listen for the sound of a stream. Where there's a stream, there's a good chance of finding a village. If we still don't find anything by nightfall, we'll have to find a dense thicket, wrap ourselves in our hammocks, and sleep through the night. That's the only way to protect ourselves from forest leeches and wild animals." Hearing Mr. Bin's words, Hai and Mr. Mew nodded in agreement. This feeling of being lost in the deep forest was utterly disorienting, even driving weaker souls to contemplate suicide. Suddenly, behind them, slow footsteps approached. Hearing the sound, all 3 instantly turned to see if it was the same demon. All 3 pointed their flashlights towards the source of the sound. In the deep, dense forest darkness, before them stood a familiar man walking with a limp. Mr. Mew's eyes widened and he exclaimed, "Gods, it's Mr. Hung!" Indeed, it was Mr. Hung. His body was covered in countless claw marks, his clothes torn, revealing raw flesh. Seeing their friend return, Mr. Bin happily ran to him, guiding him to a corner of the forest to rest. He then pulled out a canteen of stream water for Mr. Hung to drink to help him regain his senses. Mr. Hung's face was pale, unable to speak. Perhaps the feeling of having escaped death's door had left him mentally unstable. Mr. Bin then approached and asked, "Thank goodness you're all right. Now tell us, how did you escape that demon?" Mr. Hung, still weak, replied, "When the demon caught me, it clawed my entire body with its sharp claws. I struggled and kicked to escape death. While the demon was still tearing at my body, I somehow pulled out another knife from my bag and stabbed it right in the eye. It roared in pain, and I seized that precious opportunity to stand up, kick it down, and run with all my might. Luckily, the flashlight I had on me allowed me to find you all, even over such a long distance." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief that Mr. Hung was safe. However, Mr. Tan hadn't been so lucky. He was gone. What they needed to do now was find a safe place and, by morning, find a way out of this forest. The group continued walking. Suddenly, Mr. Bin turned and asked Mr. Hung, "I remember we only brought one knife each on this trip. How did you have a second one?" At that moment, Mr. Hung gave a faint smile. His voice now was completely different from his usual one, as if it didn't belong to this world. At this, Hai and the other Agarwood hunters froze. Mr. Mew, Mr. Hung, and Mr. Bin instinctively turned around, witnessing a horrifying scene that made everyone shiver. They all knew what it was. Mr. Hung smiled sinisterly and spoke in a demonic voice. "Forgive me, but I am not your friend. Hung has already been torn apart and eaten by me. This is merely his remains." Mr. Hung's eyes, normally brown, now glowed a terrifying bloody red, but what came next was even more horrifying. With his 5 fingers, he effortlessly tore open his own scalp, revealing a writhing, black, intertwined mass deep within. It was a dark, wrinkled face, now oozing with fresh blood. It had only 2 black eye sockets. Its entire body was black and putrid, writhing disgustingly. It was none other than the forest demon that had chased them earlier. It then flung something from its body to the ground, causing everyone to recoil in horror. The scene unfolding before their eyes was too terrifying, making everyone scream in fright, unable to utter a name. You're the demon?" Mr. Bin stammered in horror. It turned out that, when Mr. Hung was caught by the demon and devoured alive, the demon had also flayed his skin and put it on to deceive them all. The forest demon let out a monstrous laugh, revealing its jagged, blood-stained teeth. "I've been watching your every move since you first set foot in this forest, but this is just the beginning. The fun has yet to reach its climax. Damn you, you wretched demon!" Mr. Bin roared, his anger now overriding his fear, replaced by pure hatred. Mr. Mew and Hai lunged forward, hacking at the demon before them, but it calmly dodged them. Fools. The 3 men, holding their machetes, leaped at the demon. Thud! Blood splattered everywhere. They thought it was over, but they were wrong. The demon still stood, headless, laughing mockingly. Blood continued to flow, but it seemed completely unharmed. Then, with lightning speed, it punched and kicked, sending all 3 flying back nearly 10 meters. The bleeding wounds on their bodies healed instantly. It stood there, still laughing, mocking their helplessness. It seemed the demon was deliberately keeping them alive, just to witness a truly horrific spectacle about to unfold. Mr. Bin and Hai hadn't even managed to sit up when, suddenly, from the front of the forest, torchlights flared in the mysterious night. A group of about a dozen people, holding torches, approached the 3 men. Seeing them, Hai, hopeful, said, "Uncle, it looks like someone's coming to help us." "No, it doesn't look good, kid." Mr. Bin's reply extinguished their last hope, for the masked group all wore black scarves. The demons snarled, "HMPH, man. Now it's time for me to fulfill my promise. I'm starving." Man, the leader of the masked group, chuckled. "Don't worry, you'll get what you want now." He then ordered his men, "Tie them up for me." With that, his subordinates rushed forward, tying them tightly to a tree. Man, holding a torch, approached and sat down in front of Mr. Bin. He pulled off his scarf, revealing a familiar face, and smiled chillingly. "How's it going, old friend? Not happy to see an old acquaintance." "Man, it's you." Mr. Bin exclaimed, shocked at the familiar man. Hai, bewildered, didn't understand what was happening. Mr. Mew then asked Mr. Bin, "What's going on, sir? Do you know this guy?" Mr. Bin, his face filled with despair, nodded. "Yes, this is Man, my old acquaintance. He's the one who gave me the map to find Agarwood here." He then glared at Man. "You traitor, you bastard, you led us to our deaths." "That's right, Mr. Bin, I planned all this to lure your group here. Tonight you're all helpless, so I don't need to hide anything from you. In just a moment you'll all meet your ancestors." Mr. Bin gritted his teeth, snarling back at Man. Man, sitting casually with one leg propped up, explained in a cold, ruthless voice, "You want to know the truth before I finish you all off? Then I'll tell you and these 2 others." The demon, hearing this, stood there, utterly delighted. The feeling of humans being plunged into the abyss of despair was its greatest joy. It interjected, "This is the first time I've witnessed such a scene. How interesting. Are humans not as bloodthirsty as I?" Man ignored the demon's mocking words. He glanced at Mr. Bin and the other 2, recounting the entire story. "I was an orphan with no one to rely on. Day in and day out, I had to beg on the streets. Later, working as a laborer, I still couldn't make ends meet. Do you know why? Because in this wretched world, I lived at the bottom of society, scraping by for food. Then, thanks to hard work and diligence, I managed to start a business, or rather, became a wood smuggler. Eventually, I was tasked with smuggling wood across the border. Then, the fateful moment arrived. While smuggling wood into China, I accidentally met a shaman. I gave that old man a large sum of money, and from then on, he took me as his apprentice, teaching me various spells, including a ritual to summon a demon to make a pact. If the pact was fulfilled, I wouldn't even need to find Agarwood myself. This demon would deliver Agarwood right to my hands, and I would become miraculously rich. Mr. Bin's eyes widened. You actually did it. Man then took Mr. Bin's sharp machete from his hip and slowly continued. Yes, old man, you remember the demon standing before you? I had to summon this forest demon through a ritual. All it required was making a pact. If you sacrificed 4 human lives to the forest demon, it would give me 4 precious pieces of Agarwood. Mr. Bin interrupted. You're insane, you bastard. Nothing in this world is given for free. You harm others and you will surely face retribution. Before he could finish, a chilling sound echoed. The demon standing behind him grabbed Mr. Bin's head and snapped his neck, twisting it violently, tearing his head clean off his body. Foul-smelling blood splattered onto Mr. Mew and Hai, who were tied up, terrified by the grotesque scene. Hai gasped in horror. Mr. Mew, shocked, stared at the horrific sight. Man and his men, though startled by the demon's actions, were cold-blooded killers, so they quickly regained their composure after the initial shock. The demon held Mr. Bin's severed head, licking it a few times. It was furious. This prey is quite lively. I'll eat you first, quickly. Then, the demon plunged its claws into the unfortunate man's body, tearing out Mr. Bin's organs one by one and devouring them. Man and his henchmen, already bloodthirsty killers, now witnessed the demon eating its prey, and they too were gripped by fear. Some of the henchmen even retched onto the ground. Man, however, remained unfazed. As long as his objective was achieved, even if his parents' spirits appeared, they wouldn't stop him. At this, his henchmen pleaded with him in trembling voices, Boss, this demon is too brutal. We can't handle it. Man, the leader, calmly reassured them, Don't worry, it's fine. I've made a pact with it. If I die, it won't die. And before long, the demon had completely devoured Mr. Bin's corpse. All that remained were scattered bones. Next was Mr. Mew. In despair, Mr. Mew cried out, Please help me, I don't want to die, I just want a glimmer of hope for life. But all that answered him was helplessness. Then, unlike how it killed Mr. Bin, the demon glanced at Man and instructed, Release him. Prey that's too easy to catch is boring. Understanding the demon's intent, Man signaled his men to untie Mr. Mew and told him to run. As if given a sliver of hope, the man frantically ran as fast as he could. But alas, the demon was a supernatural entity. There was no escaping it, no matter how far he ran. The demon lowered itself, running on all fours, and with a single leap it struck Mr. Mew, sending him sprawling. His back was riddled with holes, blood gushing from the wounds, making the demon drool. You won't die yet. I'll torture and slaughter you, then drink your blood. Watching the weak man take one step, then another, Mr. Mew cried out in despair, Save me, I don't want to die. When it grew bored with its prey, the demon used its bare hands to lift Mr. Mew and snapped his body in half. Blood splattered everywhere. The cracking sounds indicated the victim's soul had departed. It continued to tear at the corpse, devouring all the internal organs in an instant. All that was left of the body was a pile of white, fragmented bones. After dealing with the 2 prey, they saw Hai lying unconscious. Man and his men didn't know what to do. One henchman suggested, Now there's only one left. Should we kill him too? What if he escapes and reports us, boss? Man, the leader, coldly replied, Don't worry. Let that demon handle it. That way, if the authorities investigate, no traces of us will be found. And at this moment, the demon, having finished devouring the corpse, returned to its spot, now walking on 2 legs, its eyes glowing red, looking at Man. My dear, I've eaten exactly 4 people now. Seeing the direction of this death, Man acted quickly. Ah, demon, aren't you going to give me the Agarwood now? You promised. With a long, outstretched arm, the demon, its 5 sharp claws extended, created a black smoke in its palm that condensed into 4 pieces of Agarwood. It threw them to the ground where Man stood and vanished. Here's what you want. I've fulfilled our agreement. Now I'm leaving. As the demon disappeared, Hai also suddenly regained consciousness. Witnessing the horrific scene of 2 Agarwood hunters torn apart by the demon, he felt a crushing sensation, his entire body stiff, unable to utter a word. The demon glanced at Man, signaling its understanding. Man nodded, then pulled out a knife from his hip and pressed it against the young man's throat, saying, You're awake, kid. just in time. Now I'll send you down to the Yellow Springs to meet the others. Blame your own bad luck." He pressed the knife even closer to Hai's throat. Hai, helpless, could only tremble as the knife cut into his jugular, blood spurting around. His whole body shook like a slaughtered chicken. Death came too quickly for Hai, surprising him completely. His lifeless body fell to the ground, his mouth agape in horror. Suddenly, from Hai's pocket, a piece of Agarwood carving in the form of a girl fell out. At this moment, the Agarwood piece absorbed all the blood of the two unfortunate victims, including Hai. In just a moment, the blood was sucked into the Agarwood like a magnet. It seemed that it was very thirsty for blood. Before this mystical sight, it was as if all other mysteries were being revealed. Man and his men, holding torches, were utterly bewildered as they witnessed this event. Even the forest demon itself was terrified, as if it had sensed an entity far more powerful than itself. Man, though initially bewildered by the eerie scene, his eyes now glowed brightly. "That's it, I can't be mistaken. Boss, you were right. That's the Agarwood Spirit, the most sacred Agarwood Spirit in this world." It seemed everyone knew what this was. If Agarwood, even when carved into such an artistic form, could spontaneously absorb human blood, it proved it possessed a very special ability. Yes, that's what everyone always desires, the Agarwood Spirit. According to ancient legends, both Agarwood and Kai Nam, a higher grade of Agarwood, could grant any wish, even manifest as a human to serve its master boundlessly. All one needed was to bring the Agarwood Spirit to a shaman, who would perform a ritual to subdue and command it. But in contrast to man's excitement, the forest demon stood there, looking at the Agarwood piece with indescribable fear. Man approached to pick up the Agarwood piece, but strangely, as he held it, he immediately recoiled. "Ah, it's burning hot. What's wrong, boss?" "The Agarwood is too hot, but how could that guy hold it?" He didn't know that, for someone with a malicious heart like him, the Agarwood would reject him. As man and his henchmen were still pondering, suddenly, from afar, waves of fog began to roll in. The fog grew denser, making man and his men shiver. They nervously asked, "Boss, what's happening? Why is there fog now?" "Calm down, get your guns out and be ready to defend yourselves." Man was still engrossed in his greed, but the forest demon standing beside him was even more terrified. It clutched its head, its red eyes bulging. This time, as if recognizing something familiar, its voice revealed obvious fear. "What is this? No, it can't be." "Ah." The dense fog swept in, engulfing the entire forest, making everything around them blurry and indistinct. The sky suddenly brought with it strong winds and rain, accompanied by terrifying lightning strikes that tore through the air. The trees swayed violently, as if bowing to the ground. Suddenly, a gust of wind from afar blew, extinguishing all their torches. This time, everyone, including the demon, was gripped by fear. And this time, a new nightmare began. Suddenly, from afar, a girl's loud laughter echoed. Man turned and commanded the demon, "Aren't you powerful? Why don't you go kill that thing?" But the demon turned to man, pointing out his stupidity and lack of understanding. "Fool, you are a primitive idiot. You and these imbeciles need to run, escape from here before it's too late. She's coming." Just as the demon finished speaking, the laughter suddenly stopped. But following it was a deafening scream from the void, piercing everyone's ears. The sound grew louder and louder, echoing with ghostly sound waves spreading throughout the mountains and forests. The ancient trees swayed as if ghosts were dancing grotesquely. Birds and beasts scattered wildly, seeking refuge from the thunderous lightning that roared across the sky. Man and his men couldn't endure it, collapsing, clutching their ears. Even the standing demon howled in pain and broke down. The frequency of the demonic sound waves continued for a long time. Unable to bear this immense power any longer, the demon clutched its head and screamed, then ran away on all fours. Man and his men clenched their eyes shut and covered their ears, but blood flowed from their ears and noses. But strangely, while everyone was affected by the demonic sound and the dense fog, Hai's body and the Agarwood carving suddenly vanished. This was the first time they had witnessed such a haunted forest, steeped in so many mysterious spiritual occurrences. The leader, Man, frantically fired his gun indiscriminately. Each gunshot echoed through the forest, and then the mysterious sounds vanished. He thought these gunshots would help him escape the illusion and return to reality. But no. He turned to call his men to flee, but at this moment a grotesque sight unfolded. His 10 henchmen had turned into demons with horns, sharp ears, and disfigured eyes and noses, looking utterly repulsive. Demons, you've been possessed, don't try to kill me. Man, terrified, gasped, raising his gun at the demonic figures. They're your men. The gunshots rang out continuously, and Man heard faint cries for help from within those demons, but the scene was so chaotic that Man couldn't tell what was real, only seeing the demons charging at him. He fired a dozen more shots, then felt dizzy, his eyes shutting, as if space had shifted, returning to reality. What in the world is this? Did I kill them all? At that moment, the scene gradually cleared. The ghostly figures were gone, replaced by the corpses of his henchmen. Their mouths were agape, eyes wide and lifeless. Perhaps they were surprised to find themselves dead by the gunshots of the man they had always trusted. Man dropped his gun to the ground. This time, his entire body felt frozen, lifeless. For more than 5 years, he and his men had committed countless illegal acts: drug smuggling, Agarwood smuggling, murder, even rape and murder. But this time, what unfolded before his eyes was the end of Man's wretched life. The fog continued to roll in relentlessly. In the ghostly mist, he faintly saw a dark shadow moving from afar. The eerie figure drew closer and closer until Man realized it was a young girl dressed in ethnic clothes, her long hair covering her face. But what terrified Man even more was that the girl's feet did not touch the ground. "You! What kind of demon are you?" He had no blood left in his body, speaking breathlessly, his mind in a state of panic and terror. To answer his question, a strong gust of wind blew, lifting the girl's hair to reveal a terrifying face. More accurately, at this moment, he clearly saw the girl's entire skin was pale yellow, like Agarwood. Her face was covered in ancient, intricate patterns. Her eyes were wide, glowing a eerie green. How could this not be a demon? Now, die for me. The demon girl didn't wait. She continuously fired at the demon girl, but the bullets simply passed through her body, scattering everywhere. The demon girl let out a mysterious laugh, accompanied by a raspy voice that echoed from the realm of ghosts and demons. "Oh, heaven, there are too many evil people here, humans with demonic hearts. It seems all I need is to maintain this human form forever, just by devouring these evil spirits." Finishing her words, the demon girl's figure lifted off the ground, not touching the earth, and instantly approached Man. Man frantically tried to flee, but his legs and entire body felt as if bound by an invisible force, unable to move. As the demon girl drew closer, Man fell to his knees. "Spare me, please spare me, I don't want to die." The Agarwood demoness brought her ghostly face close to Man's and softly said, "Spare you, Man. I merely intended to haunt you all, turn you into mad soldiers. But when you dared to lay hands on my man, you sealed your fate. But a rotten existence like yours deserves to have its soul tormented in hell." Finishing her words, the Agarwood demoness plunged her hand into his stomach. Blood splattered everywhere. The blood in his body began to be absorbed into the demon girl's body. And that was his ultimate end, the final chapter for a man who was evil to his own family and all those he had harmed. Here, Man died, his body shriveled and wrinkled, his mouth agape, eyes bulging, a gruesome sight. The Agarwood demoness then looked at the other corpses. She went to each one and absorbed all their blood until everything was engulfed in a white, hazy mist. The mist grew denser and denser until nothing remained on the ground. The bodies had vanished mysteriously, returning to the silent, deadly darkness of this vast forest. The next morning, in a nearby village, some woodcutters going into the forest found a young man around 20 years old lying unconscious by a stream. They hurried to carry him back to the village for care. It was none other than Hai. He was delirious and weak from exhaustion. The village shaman performed rituals to restore his health. Finally, after a month, Hai regained consciousness, with hazy, unclear memories. Occasionally, he would ask the villagers about the spiritual tales of the forest, but no one seemed to know anything. Over time, Hai slowly recalled the tragic events that had befallen him and the unfortunate Agarwood hunters. But strangely, when he touched his neck, there was no cut. Hai clearly remembered Man slitting his throat, causing him to bleed to death. But thinking back, he felt perhaps he had imagined it, that such a thing couldn't have happened. Hai then went to the village chief's house, asking to go into the forest to find the bodies of the men for burial, but the chief refused. It turned out that the village he was in was a hidden village deep in the mountains, where government officials couldn't enter, meaning it was almost completely cut off from the outside world. Hai returned home, unable to do anything. At that moment, he suddenly felt something bulky in his pocket. "What is this?" How is the Agarwood carving still here? Yes, it was the Agarwood piece in the shape of a girl, which Hai had always kept. He thought it had been lost during the recent events, stolen by the evil man. But no, somehow it was in his pocket. After wondering for a while, villagers passing by began to glance at him. Hai didn't think much of it. He headed back to his hut to rest. In the days that followed, finding life in this village peaceful and comfortable, he decided to live there for the rest of his life. From then on, Hai would go to work in the morning and close his doors at night. Then, over time, something very strange began to happen at Hai's house. Every evening, during bright, windy nights, neighbors passing by would see Hai sitting by the window, accompanied by a young girl in a white silk dress. The strange girl and Hai would laugh and talk, looking very happy. Later, people rumored that Hai had a spirit wife because the girl only appeared at night. They also noticed that whenever the girl appeared, the entire hut would emit a sweet Agarwood fragrance. This led one curious villager to stealthily observe him to see what was happening. But even stranger, from afar, everyone could clearly see the girl with their own eyes. But upon approaching the window, they would only see Hai sitting there, talking and laughing to himself. The girl had vanished. At that point, the villagers suspected him of being insane or possessed. But fortunately, he still talked cheerfully with his neighbors normally, and he himself was healthy, with no signs of being haunted. Time flew by quickly. 15 years later, on a stormy night, thunder roared and lightning flashed, startling everyone. The next morning, when a group of young woodcutters from the village passed by Hai's house, they peeked through the open window. Hai was no longer in the house. Everyone panicked and rushed to find him. They went to report the bad news to the village chief, who then mobilized all the young men to search for the missing person. But strangely, everything in the house was untouched, nothing was missing. Hai's house was of the ordinary, if not poorest, kind in the village, so it was impossible for thieves to have robbed him or kidnapped him. Only the Agarwood carving and its owner had completely vanished. Days of searching for Hai went on in vain. Finally, they concluded that he had gone deeper into the forest and been eaten by wild animals. The entire village built a small shrine in front of his hut, complete with offerings. In the days that followed, whenever the story of the missing young man was mentioned, many villagers whispered to each other that Hai had been taken by the demon from the Agarwood, for this forest had long been a sacred place, where legends spoke of spirits taking people away to harm them. Someone might have heard of it, but who knew that deep in the forest, tens of meters deep in the most secluded part of this great wilderness, a young couple was running hand in hand, looking at each other with immense happiness. The one running in front was a girl in a white dress, and the one behind was none other than Hai. If one looked closely, at this very moment, Hai's eyes had turned a pale blue, and his skin was as white as the girl's. It turned out that on that fateful night, after man used his knife to cut his throat, Hai had truly died in the void of darkness. The Agarwood Demoness gently approached his lifeless body, using her demonic magic to hide it elsewhere while man was still in a daze in the illusory space. The Demoness sat down and bit her own hand, drawing a drop of demonic blood. And from that bite, seeing her own blood flow from the victim's wound, her eyes glowed green as she smiled. She then watched Hai's wound slowly heal. A moment later, he recovered and saw her. Everyone knew what happened later. It was also the promise he had made to her when they were still in the forest. He promised to forever follow the will of the forest spirit. If death was near and she saved him, he would do anything the spirit desired. And this was the moment she fulfilled it, by giving him the gift of eternal life so they could be forever happy together. The couple continued to hold hands, laughing and running deeper into the forest. In an instant, their feet no longer touched the ground. They glided through the air, merging directly into the mist. They kept flying, gliding on until they vanished into the ethereal fog, leaving behind only ghostly laughter echoing from a distant, haunting, silent, and deadly forest.